Hey everyone, here at the House Now 3D series on really kind of a high level introduction and review of 3D printing and other techniques. So we have, of course, myself, Johnny Nelson, and we have our massive, successful, and wonderful co-host, Sean. Sean, hey.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in.
I don't know where I was going with that, but it was fun. It was fun, So we have a lot of fun. We talk about cool things, and today we are on series 10. And series 10, we're going to discuss best practices for 3D concrete printing. Specifically, we're going to touch on quality control and inspection. We know that's huge. You can't just print crap. We're going to talk about post-processing and finishing. And there's a lot of even the terms people will argue about. And then finally, safety and risk management. So Sean, take it away from the quality control and the inspection paradigm.
Well, quality control. I guess you want to print and print often. A lot of people, once they get their hands on a machine, they're going to do a lot of testing. They might be testing with one machine, multiple machines, multiple mixes, and it all just comes down to quality control. This is just a tool that you've got to really dial in, depending on your elevation, where you're printing, what you're printing. There's a big difference on the width of what you're going to print and the height. And some people like using, larger aggregates on the first floor compared to the second floor. An inspection, have your engineers, have your city board planners there. There's a great company in Texas. They just went out to pretty much a cow pasture and they 3D printed a demo house. But by doing that, they were able to invite everybody from the local municipalities because there's still a lot of questions with this. A lot of people might have seen videos, but have they touched it? Have they seen the machine? Have they figured out, all right, how do we do the plumbing? Where does the rebar go? So by cutting out, different sections and letting people come in, it kind of just opens up the door to people like, okay, now I get it. Now I can see it. Because there's just like a 3D printing. What is it? How does it work? So quality control, print often, make sure your print path is the right way. Multiple people, when they start out, from what I've seen and spoken to people, you might get in your first day of printing, 8, 10, 16 inches up, and it just doesn't come out right. And you've got to knock it down. It's like, oh, we didn't realize that we needed to have, retardant in it, or the temperature was different, the water mix was different.
But
a lot of people,
just to jump in there real quick, Sean, I think it's actually it's liberating for maybe a first time developer or builder to just say that's okay. Like it's okay to like practice, just do some stuff and like knock it down. We put this artificial like pressure on ourselves or the team. It's like, oh my God, we got to like do it right the first time and have it perfect. Like, no, that's not how this goes. You just find a test site or even on a maybe an actual house, and you can do it. You can just give yourself the liberty of doing it 3 times. That's okay. And that's going to be just kind of an understood part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. The more you print, the better you get at it. And there's, amazing people. You can see the progression from their first house to their second house. And then if they can get to third or fourth houses, I don't want to say they look totally different, but a lot of the mistakes, imperfections, and most of these, if not all of them, they're non-structural at all. But to the visual eye, they've improved so much, going from 2 prints to 5.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. All right, so let's move on to the topic 2, if you would, and let's talk about the post-processing and finishing. We know oftentimes the team will just print and you can just see like the kind of the corduroy pattern, but we also know that some teams are doing more intricate work. And then of course, some teams are even doing a stucco finish or another, paint or these other finishes on top of that. Talk to us about what you've seen and then different motivations to do, leave it as built, get fancier with some kind of, pattern on there, or even do a post-process or a post-finish. Maybe it's more manual, maybe not. But anyway, talk to us about what you've seen out there.
Yeah, I think there's been some great examples. Some people really love the exposed concrete, in the layered pattern. I think that can look really, really lovely when everything's uniform and there's not a bunch of, drippage on the side of it. And other people, what they're going to do is they're going to like leave one wall exposed and then cover up the other wall. So you can have like a multifaceted look to it. Other walls I've seen, they've got really nice designs because you can come out to a certain angle and put like a beautiful pattern in. That really helps to stand out as well. And, finishing, there's multiple ways to do it. Some people will say, look, you really don't want to go around a house and have to put shotcrete on it, or a whole bunch of mud afterwards, just because you might have to put up scaffolding. You've got to get more, labor, time, and cost. And then some other people, it's got a very smooth finish on the side with the flaps, and it's very minimal what it takes to finish the houses. And I've seen some, when they're finished, you wouldn't even know that they're 3D printed. It just all
Right.
depends on what you're going for, and it's really cool because there's no one way to do it, and depending on what your customer, your clients, or the designer wants to do, you've got multiple options, and that's pretty exciting.
For sure, man. And that's we know that cost plays a huge role in that. And if at least from House Now 3D's perspective, cost is a huge factor. So at least our philosophy would be leave it as it would come out of the print nozzle itself. So that would typically mean a whatever you can have the machine do. So that would be a corduroy pattern, just simple beads laid on top of beads, or something a little more intricate. When you can actually do, a simple pattern on the outside and something fancy on the inside, or vice versa. That would be something for folks to consider. But then, of course, if you have the budget, then you can literally do, like you said, anything. As you also mentioned, some houses you can't even tell that they have been 3D printed, but then you get the added benefits of, maybe it's speed, maybe it's fire resistance, maybe it's earthquake or hurricane resistance and things like that. You just get that as part of the package of the building methodology itself. So that's those are all fantastic points that you walked us through. So the final kind of topic for this the series here, let's talk about the safety and the risk management in the 3D concrete printing process.
Yeah, sure. As you were just talking about natural disasters, number one, but especially fires. There's a great company out in California, Emergent 3D,
Mm,
and California's been decimated. So many parts of the United States have with fires, and we rebuild in the same way. I think the National Forest Service, like they're looking for ways to rebuild better. And I think 3D printing is a great way, because the fire resistance of the concrete itself is way above and beyond anything, that sticks in traditional wood. I think it's something like every 4 minutes in the United States, somebody actually passes away from a single family house fire.
holy smokes, I didn't know that.
It's actually staggering.
Yeah.
The cost of insurance, the cost to rebuild, and so many of these neighborhoods that we've seen are on quarter-acre lots. There was a fire actually at right next to my mother's house, right over Christmas,
Yeah.
and the fire department, thank goodness, their biggest concern was getting my mother's house covered with water, because they said
Ah,
that you could jump, and once you hit something on the roof that's been there for I don't know how many years, it can go up very quickly. So safety, I think, is a big thing, especially on top of the construction process. Injury is the number one cost for home builders, for their insurance rates going up and up. And
yeah. So just to differentiate there, so we're talking like there's safety of the actual like machine and the contractor, of course, building the house, but then the side of that, as you kind of let out with, was of course the safety of the structure itself. Like, is it in a fire zone? What other kind of like natural or even internal elements might like burn the house down or destroy it? But then of course there's the safety part of like the contractor actually putting the house up and building it. So definitely both related to safety, but there's a different time scale and horizon for both of those. But please go ahead.
yeah, also, I mean, take a look at the Gulf Coast and parts of Florida. The rates of insurance have went up multiple times for people, and some of them, the FEMA flood zone maps have changed. Storms have went to places they've never been before, or they were in like a 500, year chance of a storm happening. And with traditional housing, like we know, if you get a foot of water in your house, all of that has to be ripped out, all your sheetrock, all your plywood, all your framing behind it. You've got electrical issues. When you have a 3D printed house, I mean, that's a solid structure, with your insulation and your concrete. So if water does get in, your cost to fix that is going to be much less, because you're not going to have the rot, the mildew, and the insurance costs. Like I said, there's some people, they're going to have to move just because their insurance has went up 5 times.
Right.
And
Yeah, the government. I mean, there's talk, and I think we've seen this. They've seen a push for this, is
Mhm.
for some governmental intervention
Yeah,
in these high risk areas wherein, I mean, people want to blame the insurance companies, and there's certainly a lot, like, we're not advocating that they're all good, but also like they can't
yeah,
go out of business as well. I mean, if you have like a massive hurricane or whatever, and then it takes out thousands, hundreds of thousands of homes, and there's losses of 20 or 30 billion dollars, like their insurance companies at the end of the day are just a business. Like they can go out of business if there's too much, if the, you know, if the cost to income ratio or the expense to income ratio doesn't pencil out, so they can go in bankrupt too. So that's why people are saying like, well, with more, you know, with more people living in more high prone areas for disaster, then government might have to step in. But to your point, you know, they might have to move. Or maybe the larger issue here that we're kind of like driving towards is, what if you built a home that was not only just less expensive to construct, but also simply more durable, just as simply a new paradigm of not being susceptible to the same conditions that, you know, maybe a traditional stick frame would be. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, there's multiple insurance companies in the southeast that are actually closing up shop for that
Yes.
reason. They're going to go out of business. But take a look at your traditional home, and you're going to have your, square walls, which we keep coming back to. But if you've got 100-mile-an-hour wind, that hits a square wall, where's it going to go? It's going to go down. It's going to go up. It's going to go to the sides. But that pressure is what actually forces the roof off. I know everyone has hurricane ties, but if you can design something that has a rounder shape, something more natural, in design, when that wind hits it, it's going to go around the building. And that's really what we should be striving for in a lot of these storm prone areas. And, definitely being out of a flood zone, I think is best practices to start. And then there's other companies. There was a great development built in the middle of Florida. They went out, not saying in the middle of nowhere, but they're like fully dependent on solar power. But when they designed the house, the water irrigation plan was their number one concern, because they said, even though we're not in a floodplain, a storm comes across, he goes, we could be living in a swamp. So a lot of times people just say, okay, we're getting a slab, we're building up. But what happens in your neighborhood, like when you get 1.5 feet of water over a weekend? And I
Yeah.
think planning for the worst to happen, to start off with, and having those safeguards in place is the smarter way to build moving forward. And I think more and more people are looking into, control of water flows, irrigation runoffs, and storm prevention plans. It's very smart.
Awesome, man. Well, that's a wrap, folks, for here at the House Now 3D mini series here on 3D concrete construction and printing. And we obviously thank you for listening. Thank you for giving us an audience. And if you found this useful, drop a like, drop a comment below. And then, of course, we'll be continuing to have more on this series and more. We're just having kind of these high level discussions on all that pertains to this topic. So until next time, thank you. Signing off, Sean. Hey.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.